Alright, so now we're on our next section. You only have, after this, women's art, and you have the Renaissance. So you're almost done. Alright, so after this, you'll have a quiz as well. This should be kind of a longer section, so just be prepared. It should be probably in 2 parts. We'll see if I can get done with 1, but I seriously doubt it. Now, the sculpture section. This is probably generally one of the class favorites. At first, they're kind of like, okay, sculpture, I don't like doing sculpture. They understand painting. But when I get done explaining installation and sculpture, you guys generally fall in love with this. It's generally also something that you guys remember. So we're going to kind of start in this process a little bit back into the history portion, around 18th century, and then we're going to move to modern sculpture and contemporary sculpture. So let's get started. First one, Augustus Rodin. Now, I keep using my top 5 artists. This guy would be number 2. Okay, number 1 is Michelangelo. Number 2 for me is Augustus Rodin, and number 3 is Mondrian, Pete Mondrian. So those are my top 3, and I talked about Pete Mondrian in the in the German Expressionist group, and right before that, the 1930s and 40s artists. So he was kind of in that mixture. And so anyway, let's get into Augustus Rodin. Now, what makes him so great? Well, it's the way his bronze looks. Now, he's a bronze sculpture, okay? The bronze is a type of metal. It's generally known as the sculptor's choice of metal. It's what most collectors will choose. They will choose a piece of bronze over most of any other metal. Why? Because it's so permanent. It lasts forever. It's a difficult medium to work in. It's classic. It's been going on since the Renaissance. Now, the difference between him and other bronze sculptures, it's the way he did his bronze. When you look at the bronze texture and the skin tone that he gets on his subjects, they are very lifelike. He actually puts his own hair and arms, and even sometimes like chicken skin to get goosebumps on the skin texture, okay? And the bronze will capture that, all right? And so if you remember in Linda Ridgway's video where she's pouring the bronze, okay, and then they leave it in like a little heater, well, that's his technique, okay? And before that, most people just pour the bronze, let it just kind of air dry, and instead of reducing the heat slowly, what happens when you don't reduce the heat slowly is you get more, you lose a lot of the details, the texture, and that's something he kind of invented. So in the first piece that I'm going to be showing you, it's talking about that. So he titled this first piece, The Age of Bronze. Now, there is an art historical time called the Age of Bronze, but he's saying, right now, I am changing the history of bronze in this art piece. He had put a lot of eggs in one basket on the Age of Bronze. What's amazing about this piece, the piece you see on the left and the piece you see on the right, the piece on the left is done in plaster. He does every sculpture in a plaster mold or a plaster base, and then he adds wax onto this, then makes a mold, and then from that mold he can pour multiple sculptures. This is done in one solid piece. It is not connected together like Miss Ridgway's, where it's all kind of broken together and then she's welded it. Here it's poured in one solid mass, which makes it extremely heavy. Now, if you remember also, Miss Ridgway had a white patina, a graphite patina. Here you see a green patina. He actually adds that color of green onto the metal, and that's called oxidizing the metal. And then once it's at a perfect state, and you can choose to kind of paint it on to get certain color tones. Once it's at a certain state, it's then preserved with wax, and typically with a beeswax of some sort, or sometimes just naturally the metal will adhere to it and it will stay. But now, if he gets the beeswax, it can stay outside, and it will preserve its color over time. Now, the wax does break down within time. If it is an outdoor sculpture, it has to be pre-waxed about every year. Now, and we'll talk about that with Henry Moore's piece after this. Now, when he entered this piece in 1877, I want you to think back what was going on, and I've already covered this section, what was going on in 1877. Well, hopefully you said Manet and the Impressionists and Post-Impressionists were starting. Hopefully you're thinking in that genre. Now, if you remember, what was happening to Manet at that point? He was getting kicked out of the salon, all right? Okay? Well, that's what's going on with this, okay? This piece, he believed, was the greatest sculpture in bronze to ever be made. And when he entered it into the salon, he was expecting it to get in. But he was wrong. It got rejected. Why did it get rejected? Well, it's because he added a male member at the bottom. Okay? Alright, so when he added the male penis there, and remember, gallery directors at this time and curators were all men, so they typically looked at that and going, I don't feel comfortable with that man's member showing. And so they rejected it. Now, when you do a bronze piece of metal, it costs a lot of money. All right, this really hurt his growth, because he thought he was going to go in, be uber famous, and then from then on, he would be an instant success and keep making more and more sculptures. But to get kicked out and have to wait a year to apply again, that really kind of hurt him financially for 1 year. And so he also kind of felt a little bitter about it. Now, when you look at this, when you look at his skin tone and all the muscles, it's just as good as Michelangelo's carved in marble. The way he looks at the tone of the skin, and you see all the little muscle tones and details in this sculpture. Now, if you'd like to see one of these in Dallas at the Nasher Sculpture Center, we have the plaster bust, okay? And to have that in our permanent collection, that is a very, very valuable piece to have. And I would highly recommend, if you've never been to the Nasher Sculpture Center in Dallas, Texas, and you live here, go check it out. There's days that are free. If you're a student, they do student discounts if you're not there on a free day. Every first Friday of the month, they have museum at night. So it's always kind of a great date place. Highly recommend it. If you're single and you want to take people out, that's a great evenings. There's food trucks. There's a lot of events going on. A lot of people. It's a fun atmosphere to go to, and I highly recommend it. So on that note, so this piece was rejected. That's what I want you to understand, and it's because of the nudity issue, and the curators said this piece looks too lifelike as a human being, and they thought at one point that he might have bronzed a human being, and if that was the case, it would look like Han Solo and Carbonite. It would have been all like frozen looking, so, and screaming. So that couldn't have happened. But it does have a very lifelike in the skin tone. I know his male member's not as large as most people. I don't get that one. So anyway, so we'll skip on to that part. Usually when I show this piece, few people chuckle at this guy. So on that note, we'll move to the next one. So, Bergers of Calais is his next piece. Okay, now this is 10 years, so we're jumping actually 11 years from the last piece I just showed you. Now, at Bergers of Calais, here he is doing a memorial piece. Now, Calais is a small bordering town from France, from Italy to France, and these people in Calais are residents of Calais, is what it's basically. And what was happening during this image and this memorial piece is during Napoleon's reign, he would take little border towns, and then he would move on down south and keep taking another border town and another border town. Well, Callias was kind of his last town he was taking before he didn't go anymore into Italy. And these people that were originally just farmers that lived there on that bordering town, basically they were saying to them, okay, well, now just move to Italy and start another house. Well, that to those people that are like, you're basically kicking them out of their home, and they were very upset about it. But they also knew from other towns, if this should ever happen, just kind of wait it out and the soldiers will move on down south, and then you'll get your home back and everything will be okay. Well, they stayed there for about 6 months. During that 6 months time with the soldiers, these a group of people that stayed, and they guesstimate it's about 200 people. They stayed in the town, and they were watching the soldiers kind of take over their town, and they basically became beggars. So this is actually beggars of Callias is the technical time for burghers. That's what that means, beggar. So these were beggars, but they were originally the homeowners there, and some of the soldiers felt bad for them and would give them food and try to help them out because, they understood that they kicked them out of their home. But Napoleon showed up to Callias and noticed that there's a lot of homeless people and beggars in the area, and he decided that the next day he would round them up and execute every one of them. Now, they put out signs, and they told people, and then also, besides telling the people, a lot of people didn't believe it was going to happen. Some were like, no, it's not going to happen, and they decided to stay. And then some people, they saw the signs but couldn't read the signs, because you got to remember, not everyone had literacy, because a lot of them were farmers, and they didn't have school. And so here, the town, this is like supposed to be the town street square, where they're marching down, all 200 of them, and they are getting ready to be executed. Now, when you look at some of the faces on these people, what is going on? Well, first of all, they're a little larger than life size. They're about 6'2" to 6'5", each one of them. So they're a little bit bigger than normal. They're on a pedestal a little higher up, so you look up to them, okay? And then for the actions and the stances that these sculptures have is the stages of grief that we have. So the first one you see on the left is a man kind of leaning over to another guy, and he's basically he's in the anger stage, and he's telling them to shut up before they shoot you. The other one next to him that you can kind of see the face, he's basically in the why is this happening to me phase. And people that are in death row that go through these griefs, people that have cancer, this is something that they think about. All right, why did I get this? They get to the anger phase, and then you have the next guy that's behind everybody, and he's into disbelief, and he's shocked. He's just like, I can't believe this is happening. He's already got the answer, and he's kind of in disbelief. And then the other two are in the acceptance. Okay, they're looking straight ahead, and they actually have nooses already around their neck. And so they're basically saying, we even brought our own noose, so you wouldn't have to waste another noose on it. So they've accepted their fate, and they know they're going to die. And then the last one on the end, he's in the sorrow phase, and he's in the uncontrollable crying phase. And so he wanted to capture all these emotions because he was thinking, what did these people what was going through their minds as this was happening? And this is a great memorial piece because none of these people, they didn't do anything wrong. They're completely innocent, and here they are being executed. And France feels horrible about this as a nation. Napoleon probably not. Napoleon, he's a dictator. He ruled, and if he saw something he didn't like, he took care of it. And that's one of the, Napoleon's kind of held with this high regard, but at the same time, he did hurt a lot of people. And so So here's one of those scenarios. And so this was one of his big commissions. He did a few more before this after getting kicked out of the salon. But at this point, he is in the salon. He does get in, and I'll show you the piece that he gets into. Here's another version of that sculpture. It's not taken care of as much. You can see it's kind of got a little weathering going on versus the other one where it's real rich and black. But you can see, again, their emotions and how big they are. Now let's go to the next piece. Okay, Walking Man. Walking Man is probably his greatest piece because this piece is a sculpture shown in motion. And this did get into the salon. It was accepted. Now, one of the things about this, it's kind of a weird piece, okay? We know it's a man by the torso. We don't see a woman's breast on top of the torso. And it is a very masculine shape. Now, when we look at it, it has no arms and no head. Well, do you need arms to walk? No, you just need your legs, right? As for the head, yeah, you need a head to walk. But why would you take a head off of a sculpture? Well, the reason is you want to hide the identity. Now, whose body is this? This is Augustus Rodin's body. All right, and I'll prove it when I get to an art piece that shows his head onto a sculpture. He doesn't want the people to know that that's his body. And on top of that, to get into the salon, okay, and I said the last piece, Age of Bronze, was 1977. It takes a while to get the sculptures and make the bronze, like I said. Now, for this in 1977 to 1877 to 1880. So here he is. He's finally getting accepted into the piece, but he knew he had to cut off the member of this man. So he actually put it on. So he put his actual member probably into the sculpture. Then he took a certain kind of a knife and cut it off. When he did that, it's a very aggressive statement. He's basically kind of getting it's an anger statement at the salon saying, how dare you not accept my last piece, so you better accept this piece. And it did get accepted. Now, besides it showing the human form, okay, and hiding his identity and everything else that you see, he's also giving you that sense of movement. Now, there are sculptures before this one that has a staggered look. Okay, Roman sculptures have this one step that goes a little bit forward. But if you notice, this step is generally really statured. And I give an example in my class. I will stand in a very statured pose in this. I say, doesn't this look a little odd if I stood here the whole time just like that? Yeah. And everyone would expect me to move as I'm talking. And if I just stood like that, it'd just be this kind of weird stance the whole time. And so when you see this stance, you obviously connect in your mind the next step. So it puts the sculpture in motion. So this is the very first sculpture to ever show motion, okay? And so this was a very big piece for that time period. And besides that, too, every part of the body you see there is what takes to move, okay? When everybody moves with their body, the first thing that moves when you are in a forward position is first your shoulders and your chest go forward. And as your chest goes forward, your legs connect to your chest. All right? And I make an example. I played sports, and I always tell athletes, if they're playing football or basketball, if you're watching your opponent's chest and shoulders, you'll know exactly where they're going. That's the first thing that moves before the body moves itself. And it's kind of a telltale thing to think about. Now, the reason I say this for athletes is one of my daughter's a basketball person. She loves to play basketball. And I tell her those little tricks, and she's a guard, and she guards the ball and guards the defense really well. And so she's constantly watching shoulders. And once I told her that, it made total sense to her, and it really helped her out over time. Another thing is my son likes to play football, and I played football. And one of the things I always say to him, he's a lineman, I say, if you get a hold of their armpits, there's nothing they can do. And it's so true. If you get a hold of someone's armpits, and you push them from their armpits, their legs will follow. Okay, especially if you're a bigger person. And I've always used that as my method. If I had to get somebody out of my way, that's what I would do. I'd grab them by their armpits and I'd move them out of my way. and it works. It really does work. So that's one of the things, that's why this piece is so important, is it's showing every sense of the idea of emotion, the way we move. Because you truly don't need your head to move forward. You just need it for your brain to move all the functions, but he didn't want his identity being shown here. Okay? Now, here we get to this next piece, okay? If you remember seeing this piece with Brancusi, okay? This is the piece he's making a reference to. Now, remember I said Brancusi was highly educated, and during this time, Brancusi is trying to make a reference to Augustus Rodin, and he's also making a reference to Picasso, two of his greatest artists. Here is Matisse. Okay, now why would Matisse be in this now? Because most of his sculptures look very rubber band, or his human forms are very elastic. Now Matisse, as a young man, he wasn't that young, but he was fairly young. I mean, he was in his 30s and 40s. He went up to Augustus Rodin, who was established at this point, and he basically said, "May I study under you?" And Rodin said yes. Picasso also asked to study under Rodin, and Rodin said no. Okay. At this point, Picasso is starting to get he's trying to get he's getting his name put in there, and it's starting to but one of the things is he would look at common trends in art and he would emulate those, but he would do it in a way that his style became more popular than some of the original people. And what Augustus Rodin said to Picasso, he said, "You're a chameleon, and you literally copy everybody's style. You take everybody's style and use it for your own. I don't want anybody to ever look at my work and think, is that a Picasso or a Rodin?" And so he chose Matisse because Matisse was totally different from him, and it just made sense. And so for that, Picasso got upset and said, "Fine, I'll find my own sculptor." And we'll get into the Battle of the Heads here in a minute, but this started a whole fight between Matisse and Picasso at an early on phase. And here is Matisse's version. He called it the Surf, okay? But it's his version of the Walking Man. But if you notice, he put Augustus Rodin's head on top of the body, and he added the male member there. So he was trying to say, look, this is Rodin who's the subject matter. And so this is kind of the proof behind everything as well. Here is Matisse's Serpentine. This is more famous sculpture that he did working under Rodin's influence. And even when you look at this, the metal's highly polished. He's using all the right techniques. He's basically getting all the techniques, but he's doing the total opposite of Rodin. Rodin wanted to get all the veins and muscle tones. And here is Matisse just trying to get the essence of the human, okay, of a female form, and he doesn't really care that it doesn't have all the muscle tones correct, and that's part of his style. And so again, when I look at this, I don't think Augustus Rodin, I think of Matisse when I see it. So, and that's what Rodin was wanting. So here is the Battle of the Heads, and I will go back to Rodin. I just wanted to bring this in at this point. So here's the battle between Picasso and Matisse, and they are at this point, they're fighting, but like I said, they're friends. They need each other, but they hate each other, okay? They liked each other for competition, and they pushed each other. I don't think Picasso would be as great without Matisse, and I don't think Matisse would be as great without Picasso. They definitely needed each other. All right. So here are the heads. Now I showed you one of the heads earlier in another lecture. So here's a group of them now. About 4 years ago at the Dallas Museum of Art, they had all 23 heads, okay, and remember this is a 20-year battle, back and forth, and they had all the heads lined up, and I've seen a few at this point in my life, but to see all 23 is something I wanted to see, and I could see the difference. And when I looked at it, hands down, Matisse was a better sculptor than Picasso. And you can even see in the last pieces where Picasso just kind of gave up. So here's a version. So you can see the first one that you see is Matisse, then Picasso's is the next one. All right, then it goes Matisse, then Picasso, then Matisse, okay? So when you look at this series right here, which one do you like better? Do you like the Matisse at the beginning, or do you like the Picasso next to it? Okay, now I'm going to show you the two best heads that they did. Okay, so here's the first one. So you can see in 1909, Picasso came out swinging. He came out strong. All right, and this is about the third head that was made. Okay, so here he comes out trying to say, look, I can do a bust. I can do a great head. And he's doing it in almost this kind of geometric shapes. Okay, but then if you look at 1929, okay, Henrietta III, okay, or the third, okay, this is a third version of this head, and this is the last one. Okay, now when you look at the variants, which one do you like? Do you like Picasso's or do you like Matisse? It's all a preference. Some of you might say I like Picasso's better. Some of you might say you like Matisse's better. All right, but you can see how the metal in Matisse has that shiny quality. You can see how the structure feels more secure, more balanced. Picasso's kind of feels a little bit more jagged and a little dull. Okay. So there's a difference between those, all right? But after Matisse came out with Henrietta III, that was the last one. They quit fighting after that point. I think he kind of said, you're a better sculptor than me, which probably took, 20 years. That's kind of a long battle back and forth. So, last piece for Augustus Rodin, his most famous piece. Okay, he has other famous pieces. If you've seen Night at the Museum, I think it was the Smithsonian, the second movie, there's a man holding the world. That's another Augustus Rodin piece. You've seen the man that also does he's got his arm pointed out like he's like a Heisman Trophy person, but he's up in the air, kind of showing off his muscles. That's another Augustus Rodin. But his most famous one, hands down, that people love and know is The Thinker. All right, this is where he's taken the sculpture, and now this sculpture doesn't have a ton of muscle tone and beauty to it, and it's not highly revered as a solid sculpture, but what makes this more important is the way that it allows the sculpture to have this idea and a breath and a life of thinking is what he's given it. Most of the sculptures are simple structures and simple actions, and here this is a solemn action, and it is a beloved piece altogether, the way it's all set up, the way the man fits on the form, the flow of the body. It's perfect, and it's probably one of his greatest. There's many others out there. If you like his work, almost every major city has one. All right. So if you don't live in a city, in a major metropolis, there might be some other cities that might be in your area that you might find a good place to meet up and see Augustus Rodin. So, but most of you I saw look like you have the same area code number in my class. So if you're from Dallas, the closest one in Dallas is the one that you see at the Nasher. But if you want to see The Thinker, the closest one from Dallas is in Kansas City. All right. I went to Kansas City Art Institute. It's right across the street. Now, okay, Albert Giacometti, all right. Now, Giacometti, his work is about human form as well, but his is kind of stretched, okay. This man loved to smoke, had a very neurotic attitude. He was very hyper and active and just a really kind of an interesting character. And he didn't live too long, he died at the age of 64. It's mostly probably because he smoked. The man constantly has a cigarette in his mouth in every video I've ever seen him in. But when you look at his structures, okay, his bronze sculptures, here you can see how it's been stretched out, almost like a stick figure. Why is he doing that? Well, he's thinking about the horizon. When people are walking across like an horizon area, you can tell that it's a person by the way it's walking, but you can't tell the sexuality of the person. You just know it's a human being. And that's kind of where he's at. He's thinking about that horizon where you can see the human form from the distance and in its active motion. Here's a studio, and you can see inside of a studio how messy it is. And his studio is not very large. It's not a large space. But he's in the process of building. Now, this is a picture taken here from local Dallas. That's the photographer right there and the art critic of Dallas. And here she is walking past the sculptures. Now, why is she doing this? Well, one of the things about when you go into a Giacometti's show, besides his drawings on the wall, is the way he places the art in the gallery space or museum. It is really not... Typically, you place one sculpture in a corner of each room, and then you put one in the center. In his, it's almost like it's jam-packed. You almost feel like you're going to trip over one of them because he puts them in places that are not normal. And what he wants you to do is, as you're walking in the space, that you're uncomfortable that the sculpture's in your walkway. And you have to maneuver around them. You have to be conscious of them. And that's one of the things that I like about him, is that he thinks about the way the viewer is going to look at the art. And here is one of his smaller pieces, and these are about 2 inches tall on a single sheet of metal. This is also Linda Ridgway's favorite sculptor, one of her favorites. So this is, if you like Linda Ridgway, this is one I'd highly recommend you take a look at. Now, I have a video coming up. Here's the video. You can click on the video. It's a 2-part video. It's about 15 minutes for each video. Now, if you like Nightmare Before Christmas and Tim Burton films, you're going to love this. If you don't, you might not like it. It's kind of creepy. It's in that creepy atmosphere. It's done in it's a French film animation group, and they did a really good job, and I think they kind of depicted him really well. If you're curious, click on the video and watch it below. Like I said, it's about 30 minutes. Now let's get into Henry Moore. Now, Henry Moore is one of these artists that is commonly in every gallery space, in every museum throughout the United States. If you'd like to see a Henry Moore, one of the pieces that we're talking about today, if you live in Dallas, the North Park Mall has one up in their main walkways, right in front of the movie theater. So if you're going this holiday to see a movie, or during the school year going to see a movie, check and see if you recognize the Henry Moore that we're talking about. Now, Henry Moore, just a little backstory on him. He's normal. He's a normal guy. Nothing out of the ordinary. Married his high school sweetheart. Had a good life. Grandchildren. Just a good man altogether. Nothing out of the ordinary with him. He focuses on, in his art, on the human aspect of women anatomy, but he breaks them down into an abstract form. Okay, they're obviously women by just the sense of the curves of the woman, but they also take a lot of consideration that you can see what we call the sexy or curved line that goes from head to toe of a woman, and he's trying to pull that essence out but also breaking it down at the same time. So here's the piece that the Nasher owns. Again, it's a plaster bust. Again, plaster is worth more than the actual bronze. Why is that the case? Well, the reason is if anybody else wants a copy of this exact sculpture, well, since the museum owns it, they can borrow it on loan, and the city makes more money. This is a good revenue builder, all right? But this piece is a kind of a breakdown from this piece. All right, so this is the piece that's at the North Park Mall. So if you get, it looks exactly like this one. All right, so if you get a chance, go over there and look at it. All right, it's a great mall too, by the way. This piece again has more human realistic aspects, but as you can see here, it's still abstract in a lot of ways. Now, this one has obviously been taken care of. This one has not, okay? This one is in New Orleans. And any place that is on a border town for water and humidity, the one bad thing about having bronze sculptures outside is that the bronze breaks down and you lose part of the patina. Now, can you bring it back to the state when you first got it? Sure. It takes a lot of elbow grease and working that out, and you have to hire someone special to do it. But in a lot of cities that are pretty much a poor community, like New Orleans doesn't have a ton of money for their arts, unlike Dallas, and Fort Worth has a ton of money. They tend to just kind of leave it alone because they let it just kind of naturally change, because as soon as they fix it, it will go right back because the city's so humid, and if they don't put it inside, then it's not worth doing all the keeping it at its original state. Now, just to give you an idea, it's about $10,000 per sculpture for us to keep a piece in natural state with the beeswax that they put all over the sculpture. So it's about $10,000 for that. And if you have a large amount of sculpture collection outside, that can cost a lot if you're trying to preserve them. And in like humid places like Houston, Seattle, any coastal cities, New Orleans, even like parts of Florida, Miami. And so when you look at those cities that get a lot of rain and a lot of stuff on it, you have to do it more often. So it could come up to be $10,000 every 3 months. So they tend just to let their sculptures go green, which is okay. It can always be fixed. So just know that if you ever see it in another place. Now here is the last piece of his, and I just wanted to kind of illustrate this. Now this one was done in 1980, I want to say 88, 89, and this is all made out of marble. So he doesn't also work only in bronze. He also works in marble as well, and this marble piece is all done by a computer. Now, when this piece was made, a lot of people got upset that a computer chiseled out his shapes from his original scanned sculpture that they did. And now this is about I'd say almost 20 yards long. It's fairly long, and it's about, I'd say 15 feet, 16 feet high in the highest parts. Now, when they did this and a computer did it, everyone got very upset. Now, to me, I think today we're more accepting on computers doing imagery like photography. Computers do a lot of that. At that time, the computer was kind of a new thing, and for him to do it, it was not acceptable. But now we've kind of come down and said, no, I think it's acceptable. It's the artist's idea is what we're looking for. So, now we're into Richard Serra. Richard Serra, alright, one of my favorite sculptors. Now, this man is intense. I've seen him about 2 or 3 lectures in Fort Worth. He's amazing. The way he talks, he's so elegant, but he is a very intense artist, and he expects people to understand his work before they come to his lectures, and which is acceptable. I mean, now, what is his work about? Well, it's gigantic sheets of metal. It's steel, not stainless, because he wants the rust to show up. The rust is just as important. Now, here's one of his smaller installations. This were kind of like in the 80s that were really popular. Now in the 80s, if you looked at these they weigh a couple ton in a space. Now, what is he doing? Well, when you walk through these spaces, what happens is you know the cardinal rule, don't touch the art. Well, what does this art do? Well, it throws off your balance. It throws off your equilibrium. And as you're walking through, you start to want to lean because the sculpture is leaning. Now, that for me is always a little awkwardness as I walk through the space. Also, I'm a bigger guy, so when I walk through one of the entrances, I never go to one of the shows when it's a crowded space. I tend to go on a Tuesday or a Wednesday when no one's there to go look at his art if he has a show in Dallas, and I walk through it comfortably without anybody walking on the other side. Because one time I went to a show and I looked at a guy who's about my size, and I looked at him and he looked at me, and I thought, we can't squeeze between each other, or either if we leapfrog, I go down, he goes over, or we just turn around. And that's what we did. We just turned around and went down the other way. And so it kind of was interesting. As I made that turn into the middle, there he was. And so from there, I just followed him the rest of the way so we wouldn't have any more accidents like that. Now, I also said, when I pulled up for sculpture, I pulled his artwork up too. He also made an art piece where it was just a single panel piece of metal, and it was in New York City, and two young men decided that they were going to skateboard across it. And so, which is a big no-no. You can imagine the wheels would mess up the rust and everything. And so they're skateboarding on it, and one of the boys climbed all the way up to the top and got on his board and pushed. And the thing was just perfectly balanced there. And when he pushed off, it literally fell back, and he had a friend behind it, and it crushed him and killed him. So, when you look at all of his sculptures that are outside, that are permanent pieces, he now has to put them into the ground with concrete or bolt them down, so this accidents will happen again. And since then, the city has now a commissioner who's in charge of public art in most cities that will give the authorization for putting the piece in, because they don't want anybody accidentally getting hurt on it or dying from them. So we artists kind of call it the idiot clause. Don't forget about the idiot clause if you ever put a sculpture outside, or even if you have something that's outside that is a video playing and someone's driving down the road and they're watching the video instead of the road, you can be liable as the artist for distracting that person driving down the road. I don't get it, but that, this country is a little sue happy on that. So now we get to the next one here. Okay, so here we have 3 different colors of rust on this piece. We have a red, a black, and a yellow. Now, for the red, okay, that's more in the Texas, Midwest, lower area of the country where the rust does that kind of color. If you look at the black, that's more on the East Coast. You get that in the eastern areas. And then the yellow, you see that tend to be that rust in the areas for where California and the desert area of Arizona, Nevada. Okay, so you see those kind of rust colors. So he puts these sculptures in different parts of the United States, gets them to a certain weather look, and then once they get that way, then he puts them into museums and galleries. He calls these his labyrinths. So here is a labyrinth that is in Pennsylvania. It is a beautiful place. I've been to this exhibit. When I walked through it, I was amazed. First of all, this weighs tons and tons of metal. I don't even know how much tons it is. It's a lot. And this is on the 2nd floor, and I don't know how that building holds it because it's such a strong building. I know that they had to build that building just for this portion, for this piece. And it is quite amazing. Now, when you go into the exhibit, you're going to hear tons of people say, don't touch the rust, don't touch the rust, don't touch it. Why don't touch it? Well, when it's an indoor piece like this, as you touch it, you take off the rust. And the more people that touch it, the more the color goes away, and they're trying to keep the color. That's why it's on an indoor place. If they left it outside, it wouldn't matter if people touch it because it would just go back to its rest state as it evolved. But like I said, Pennsylvania is on the East Coast, and so the color would even change, and they want to keep it in that yellow tone. Now here's the one that's in Fort Worth, at the Fort Worth Modern. One of the best museums in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I love going to this museum. It's one of my favorites. Now, this piece is extremely tall, and it is a great piece. When you walk into it, it makes this echo sound when you stomp your feet. If you talk in it, it acts like a megaphone, and it lets your sound come out of it. Now, I always tell my kids if they're good when they go through the museum, they can go yell in the Saraab, so they know Richard Serra's work. And so when they're good in the museum, they walk around real well, and then at the end, we go into the sculpture, and then they scream their little heads off. I guarantee you probably could hear that scream for up to 2 miles. Here's what it looks like inside, and it just kind of elevates right out the top. Now, here's another one of his pieces. Now, this one's at the Dallas Museum of Art, or it might be at the Nasher. It kind of hops back and forth. Now, this one is a super simple piece to see, but I also wanted to show you, as you walk through the center, see how it can throw your balance as you walk through, because it really does angle you as you go through the space. Now, we're going to get into Jeff Koons. This guy is a class favorite. Everyone loves Jeff Koons. Now, what makes Jeff Koons so great? It's his playfulness. He has a lot of fun playing with his sculptures. There are some pieces in here that you have to be aware of. I'll be going over a series that is not suitable for children. So if you do take family members and stuff to see one of Jeff Koons' shows, do know that if it's a retrospect, there will be parts of the show that it is pornographic. So don't go into those rooms and don't go into those areas. Be very careful. Okay, but we'll get into that as we go through. But the majority of his work everybody loves. Now, I got a lot of videos of Jeff Koons down below, I think. I got 2, I believe, for his section. Please click on those when I go to him. I think you'll really love them. Let's start with the first video. The first video is his car. Okay, so we've been talking about these race cars. He's one of the last people to do a car. Here Banksy, like I said, and Shepard Fairey are working on a BMW car. So we'll see if that comes out in the next couple of years. Now here, okay, for Jeff Koons, his car is supposed to give a sense of motion and a sense of movement. All right, and when you click on the video, it'll talk about the idea behind it. Okay, so watch the video below. I think you'll enjoy it. Next one, Puppy. Okay, Puppy is one of his greatest pieces. Now, he's taken a porcelain doll from Tiffany's of a little toy dog. Okay, he found this little porcelain Scotty dog and thought this would be perfect. Now, where did he get the idea behind it? Well, you might have seen the commercials for Chia, the Chia pet, the porcelain object that grows. Well, that's what he's doing this for. He's doing the exact same thing as like a Chia pet. He puts the flowers in, and then from when the flowers start to grow, it waters from on the inside. So he got his whole idea from an infomercial. All right, and this is where, when I tell people, I can't make art. Well, you're just not looking. And here he's watching TV and getting a connection. All right, he just puts it on a more involved scale. And he's done tons and tons of these topiaries all over the United States. If you live in Dallas, the closest one you might see is in Houston. And that's the one on the left. The other one on the right is at Rockefeller Center, and that's not there currently. It's only there for a little bit. So here he's going to be talking about his sculptures, his metal sculptures, and his paintings. There's a video below down. Click on that, and it talks about his studio and how he works. You will notice that there are tons and tons of people that he pays to help finish his work. He has a lot of ideas, a lot of things working all at once. Okay, so click on that video and watch that. I think you'll enjoy seeing an artist in his own habitat and how many layers this artist has. Now, Made in Heaven series that he did. Okay, I chose to choose the easiest pictures for you guys to accept. Like I said, if you walk into this area, it is not suitable for kids. It is pornographic, and there are things online. If you look up Jeff Koons, you just got to be careful with what buttons you click and what pages you go to. So, just FYI. Here he is with his wife. Okay, she is a porn star, and he's an artist, so he takes his lovemaking with her to the art form. So it is all about them making love. Okay, so that's what this is about. So when you click on that, make sure you are careful that no one's around you that are kids, and second of all, just be don't take your kids into one of his retrospect shows. So he plays with that idea of sexuality in his art all the way through. Okay, sometimes they're so simple and beautiful, but then sometimes they have a sense of sexuality. I think he kind of has this kind of bipolar nature about himself. So you kind of have to be careful with Jeff Koons, with who you're seeing and what you're seeing. I always say for anybody just to go by yourself. If you like everything, you feel it's suitable for your children, then take your children. Because I had a student once, he went to Houston. They were having a huge retrospect show in Houston, and he took my class, and he was like, "Oh, Jeff Koons, yes, he was great in my art class." And I took out all those last 3 images. I took those out of the pages, and he was like, "Oh, my family will love Jeff Koons." And he took the whole family, and then he was immediately mortified with what he saw, and he's like, "My professor never told me about this." Well, I kind of hid that part for them. I didn't want that. I don't usually bring out sex for sex purposes, but on that incident, I wish I did. So now I always have that in this, and I have a disclaimer. So here's one of his Superman. This is one of his earlier paintings. So here, Superman, and he didn't get the copyrights to do Superman, so he couldn't do his shield on his chest, so he changed his body where we know it's Superman, but we don't know it's Superman, but except for the title. But if you notice, there's other things in this image besides Superman. If you look at the lower foreground, there is Popeye at the bottom. Now, Popeye, he did get the copyrights to use Popeye, and then when you look at the kind of abstract shape that's all throughout the page, olive oil is slowly emerging as Superman blows the image away. Now, what is he blowing? Well, he's blowing a pinup from Playboy. And in the center of the image is 2 thighs, and you can see a hand on right and left of the page, and she's pulling up her panties. And so this is a very sexual piece, and Superman is blowing her. Okay, so again, even when you look at it, he kind of hides it, but at the same time, he kind of brings back these sexuality pieces. So that's why I say, even if you know it's not going to be the Heaven series, you got to kind of be wary on what you see, because he does get a lot of press. So here's, again, another piece. Okay, now this one, there's no sexualness to it, so yay! Okay. So not everything he does is sexual, but here he's got Popeye and olive oil again, side by side. He's got a car in the background, and then he also has the Incredible Hulk. Now, he didn't get the rights to use the Incredible Hulk, but he got the rights from Mattel to use the Incredible Hulk blow up, and for him that actually worked out better because he does these blow up shapes like you saw in the video. So this actually worked in better parts for him. But copyright, I keep saying that word because it was important for him. He went into a local, little tiny like store at the airport, and he saw this little card where he saw this couple holding a bunch of puppies. And for him, he looked at that and thought, oh, I could make that into a sculpture. So he turned around, got home, started working on this sculpture, and he used them as a reference, but didn't use the actual likeness 100%. He changed it just a little bit. Now, the original photographer got upset when he found out that that was his photograph, and he sued him. Now, this is the first lawsuit for copyright ever, and now every art piece I make, I get it copyrighted. I make sure I'm the original, that I'm not copying from somebody else. And so here he's taken this image, okay, of this couple and the puppies, and he's changing this so it all works in one. Now, when he got to the courts, okay, this is where it got different. This is where it all kind of started to change. The courts had to say, well, it's not 100% likeness. There is the same kind of poise and their bodies are, but it is different. And they did put out a law that if you change it up to 20%, which he had, then it is okay. And now the other lawyer for the photographer, he was kind of a local, and Jeff Koons he has money and hired the best of the best, and he won the case now. But the judge did tell Jeff Koons, if you keep taking advantage of younger artists, I will prosecute you. So from there, it's kind of a lesson he learned: don't copy. And he basically got away with it at the end. You might think he got away with it, you might not. You might think he should have been punished. I leave that up to you. Now, he also likes playing with popular icons. At one point, this was the most expensive sculpture to ever be made. It's about 1 foot by 8 inches tall. It's made out of porcelain base, and then it's got gold inlays of 24 karat, and the monkey has diamonds in its arm, and it's got amethyst that Michael Jackson is sitting on. Now, this was originally sold, its starting price was $1 million, and I don't know what the final price of it was. He only made one of them, and then supposedly one that was life-size was made for an independent client. And then when Michael Jackson passed away and his Never Never Land Ranch, when they were going through his estate, this was one of the pieces that came up for sale, and it was a life-size version of Michael Jackson that he had done with Jeff Koons, working in collaboration on this. And so we kind of know that there's a life-size one, but it was always a myth until Michael Jackson passed away a few years ago. Then it emerged, and I don't know what it resold for. I didn't look up that. But here is his most recent artist relationship. He just finished this a few months ago, working Jeff Koons with Lady Gaga. Now, again, like I said, this has some very kind of a sexual connotation, but if you look at the photo shoot, that's even worse. Okay, so just FYI, when you look up Jeff Koons and Lady Gaga, you might be a little shocked with what you see. And she's an artist, and she loves art, and she wanted to be part of pop culture, and I think she asked him, if I read that correctly, to do this project with him. But let's go on to the lighter side. Let's end on a lighter note of Jeff Koons. Alright, his puppy, same name as the other piece, okay? It's his blow-up air puppies, okay? Now, these are so wonderful. They're made out of aluminum, and then they're sprayed with a colored chrome put over top. And they retail for about $9 million a piece. His heart, okay, is like a trinket that you get out of a little tiny little machine, like if you're at a restaurant or the grocery store and you put a quarter in, you turn the little knob and a little shell thing comes out. You open it up and you get this little trinket. That's where he's getting some of his ideas from. And here's one of his last ones. Here's a diamond. I love the diamond. Now the first one, it started with rabbit. Okay. Now he went to the grocery store, saw one of these little inflatable rabbits that they sell, and he immediately thought, oh, I'd like to take that rabbit and turn it into sculpture. So he went to a person that makes bronze, or not bronze, but aluminum shells, and they weld things together. He got it all back from them and looked at it, and it just didn't feel like what he wanted. It had all kinds of burn marks all over it from the welding, and it just didn't work. And then an idea came across: what if they dipped it in the chrome? And after they dipped it in the chrome, it was forever set. And so this piece started the whole thing of all those animals and objects you just saw. And it was such a big deal. About, I would say 8 years ago, Macy's Day Parade did an artist balloon of him, and I'll tell you, if you can ever see that video, listening to Al Roker talk about this, it is hilarious. He didn't know how to even talk about it. He was like, well, it's a bunny. Okay. For Thanksgiving, local artists, and it was just funny watching him stumble. So if you ever can get a chance to see it on YouTube, it's pretty funny watching him stumble. A young other artist, he made a video game, Jeff Koons Must Die. Click on the video below if you'd like to see this RPG shoot-it-up game, first shooter game of you shooting Jeff Koons and all of his art. And it's pretty funny. You might like it. Now we're getting to Anisha Kapoor. Now Anisha Kapoor is one of my favorite installation artists for public art. Now I got her book. Someone told me a long time ago, they're like, you should get Anisha Kapoor's public art commission book, and it's like the Bible for public artists, and it goes step by step, tons of research, tons of listings for grants. It's an excellent book. Now this piece is in Chicago. Okay, and the idea behind this is they wanted to have what they call a gate in Chicago, like you enter the city like you would in Walt Disney World. And so they wanted this gate, so she called it the Cloud Gate. And then, but the people there in the group, and the citizens, they all nicknamed it the Bean because it looks like a coffee bean. And now, just to let you know, this is a $1 billion art project. She did make $1 billion on the overall sale of the project, but she also had to pay for all the people, all the things. I don't know what her final outcome is. It never told you in the book, but I know she made a ton of money doing this. It is a crowd pleaser. Everyone shows up. This is one of the things to look for in the city. If you ever go to Chicago, it's a must. This is what it looks like up inside of it. I highly recommend that you look up inside and see. Okay. Now we have QAGOMA. Now QAGOMA, he is a Chinese artist. He's the #1 Chinese artist for their culture. He's their #1 seller. He uses fireworks to make all of his art, majority of his drawings. He also does sculptures that are very lifelike, and they look very real, like they're real stuffed animals in a lot of his work. Just to let you know, no animals were harmed in the making of his work. They were all made by a toy manufacturer in China, playing off of the mass consumption of toys and manufacturing in China. Click on the video below because this talks about his Guggenheim show. It's probably one of the strongest shows he did in America. I actually was fortunate enough to go to New York and see this show. It was unbelievable. But then shortly, a couple of years later, they had it in Dallas, Texas. So some of these are Guggenheim pictures and some are Dallas, Texas pictures I'm showing you. So here we go. So here is Head On. Now this is 99 wolves running in a direction in a pack. As they start to enter a space or enter into a hallway, they leap into the air, and the first one breaks his neck as he slams into the glass, and everyone else is going into it. If you remember in the video, it says that this is how we kind of fall in line with ideology of God, is one of the thinking. Or just think about social media alone. Someone says one thing and we post it, and we believe it. Okay, and that's what he's talking about, is that we will destroy ourselves without getting the true facts, is basically what this piece is about. Now, when I took my daughter to see this, she was about 4, and she's like, "Oh, the poor wolves, they're hurting themselves." So, if your kid's a little young, it might be a little traumatic for them seeing all these hurt wolves. At first, they're amazed, but then they realize at the end of the rainbow, that they are killing themselves. So it does kind of mess your kid up. So don't take your kids unless they're a little older. Here's the tigers that he did. I love these. Now he's talking about all of the useless killing of their Asian tiger, and he's using Asian arrows that are stabbing these tigers hundreds and hundreds of times, and just basically saying, how could you kill something so beautiful that's part of their culture? It's kind of like us killing the bald eagle for our culture. So for them, that's their power animal for their culture, and here they are killing it. And so he's talking about the useless of killing. Each tiger is extremely strong. This one's probably my favorite with the arrows all down the back. And you can see his firework drawings in the background. We'll be talking about those. And like I said, they look very lifelike. Okay, so here, click on the video below if you want to watch him make a firework drawing. This is it takes about 3 minutes in talking about why is he doing it, and then when he lights the fuse, it takes literally 20 seconds. But it's amazing how you can get a drawing in 20 seconds with gunpowder, stencils, and how he just it shows the whole process how he does it. So here's one of his cars that are exploding in a circle. This is some large canvases that are stretched of his exploding pieces. So here's one where he has like this rainbow kind of effect going, because he does these black rainbows with fireworks shows. His car flipping in the air, and I'll be showing you an installation where a car is doing that here in just a second. So here's his cars, okay? So the cars are exploding with LEDs. These look like something you'd see straight out of Las Vegas. When they're clustered together and they have this sense of motion as they're exploding, it's amazing. So this is an amazing. It's one of the best things I've seen in a long time. And in the Guggenheim, they even took it to the next level, where they had them falling from the ceiling, exploding. So here's some of the videos. So click on the videos below. This is one of his performance pieces of a mural that he did. Quite amazing. His rainbow, okay. And then his daytime fireworks show. So click on those. You'll love them. All right. They're excellent. And how does he do fireworks in the daytime? Baby powder. Colorful baby powder. Check it out. You'll love it. Okay, so now Yomi, I can never say Kamasa, is the next artist, and I probably just butchered that. So I apologize if you speak Japanese and and Chinese, and I just butchered those names. I'm sorry. But now, what makes her work so impressive is she is an installation artist. She makes you go into her world of art, and this is her piece, okay? When you walk into this space, this will make you feel like you're floating in the air thousands of miles up, looking at a horizon line of the city, and the way it all just kind of lays there, and it's just simply amazing. And all it is mirrors, water on the floor with mirrored rocks, and tons of LEDs, and then 4 mirrors around the walls. And as you walk into the space and they shut you up inside of it, you do see the cords, but then they magically disappear, and thousands of you just start to float with your reflection in the air, and it is quite amazing. This is my favorite one. In the show that I just saw recently, that she did tons of different ones. So here's another version. And this looks like kind of like putt-putt on acid. And you can see here is somebody inside, and you can see all the reflections of them. And there's a video below if you want to see how it looks like in person. So go on in and look. She does also do installations, okay? And this space I wasn't really thrilled with when I walked through it. Everyone was very hyper in this space, and everyone would touch those kind of floating things or these blow up things, and they're moving around. And to me, it was just a little too chaotic. I stayed in there for like maybe 20 seconds, and I was like, I'm done. It's just too much. But she's known for her polka dots. Her polka dots is her trademark, and she's been this way ever since in the 1960s. She's been right on the cusp of all the cultures for pop art, but she hadn't really made her fame until just recently in the 90s and 2000s, is where she's really blown up. And this piece just kind of went crazy. This room is a solid white room. You get a pack of stickers, and you can put the stickers anywhere you want. And if you watch the video, by the end of the video, the whole place is colored, and it is quite amazing. It's a beautiful space, and it lets the viewers interact with her artwork. She also does these performances where she will sit in a space and you can watch her. I'm not a big fan of these kind of performances. It kind of feels like an animal, like zoo exhibition thing. She does get breaks to use the restroom. She does get breaks to go eat. But I'm just not a big fan of her installations. Now, I do like these. As you're waiting to get into the rooms that are the gravity rooms, as non-gravity rooms, I guess. As you're looking in these little holes that you're waiting in line, it's kind of like waiting in line in Disney World. They give you all these little things to watch to make the time pass. Well, that's what goes on with this. You look at these little holes, and they have these infinity where it just goes on and on worlds. Like the one on the left kind of feels very Matrix-esque kind of feeling, and then you look at the one over there with the mirrors and everything shining back at you. Now the next ones are videos. Now this one is the rain room. I don't know how, I mean, they talk about how they do it, but I still don't know how they do this. These engineers made this room that you can walk completely into the rain and come out to the other side completely dry. I just don't know how it works. It's a great video. I really hope you enjoy it. And anyway, click on the link below and be prepared to be amazed. Again, I constantly do research, and this is one of those artists that I just stumbled upon and fell in love with. And I go, I got to put this in my installation talk. Okay, here's, I can never say this, Eliasson, and I probably butchered his name again. So now he also does these installations where you walk through this colorful rainbow, and you go into a room where the room here, so you can see the room has this yellow tone. As you walk into this yellow tone, all the color from your body and shirt and clothes goes to black and white, into a gray format. So it's like you're in an old black and white film. And so you lose your color as you enter the room. And then when people come out of the space, they're amazed with the space, how bright it is. And it hasn't changed. It's just that your eyes and perception has. So here is him talking about some of his environments. He makes these environments that you walk through, and they totally change your outlook on how you see the world afterward. He also does these. These are all different videos I'm going to be posting. Talked about this project where he's talking about preserving light for places that can't afford electricity. So he's an environmentalist too, as an artist. But one of his shows that he did where it had this sense of a sunset at different times of the day, and it's very bright. This atmosphere, people would come into this room and it felt very zen-like. Alright, so click on those videos, see what you think. Alright, now you're finishing up with sculpture, so get ready to go into women's art, and you only have 3 more lectures total to get through. Alright, so good job. I'll see you on the next one.